everybody, welcome to my video for my lesson plans on the 4th week of school. This is when I finally begin feeling like we're getting into a rhythm, and then of course we have the solar eclipse come this week, so things will be changed again. Now, once again, we are finished really going over the procedural lessons in math, so my skills block will become a true skills block. Now, this week in my skills block, we're mainly going to be practicing rounding on students' dry erase boards. We will do our math reference notes for rounding, but that'll be the essence of my skills block. So we're going to go straight into now math workshop, science, and then reading again. And we may talk about what we're doing in workstations. So when we get into math, we're going to be conceptually focusing on rounding. I'm not going to teach my students our tricks. Now, I will keep it real with you, and after this unit, if I still have a handful of students still struggling with rounding, yes, I will bring out the rhymes and all that, but ideally, I will get this across to students through conceptual understanding. We'll use a lot of number lines this week. I begin teaching rounding first, last week I introduced it with a PowerPoint, and then this week we'll begin by talking about nice numbers. Then after I talk about nice numbers, I'm going to move into finding the midpoint of numbers, and I do use number lines to help my students find the midpoint. Then after they find the midpoint, then we'll be discussing how to round that number. And notice I am skipping lesson 12 and 14, and that's because I am going to use those as a workstation activity. And you can see on the screen there are lots of different versions of some of the games, just for easier differentiation for you. Now I will go ahead and say when you're choosing the games, I really like the dice or the die that has 9 sides, or actually 10 sides, because it just gives you a better range of digits. If you only have 1 through 6, there will be impossible then for students to roll a 0, a 7, 8, or 9, which are very important digits as we work with rounding. And then on Friday, after we've had a week's worth of practice, my students will do another scavenger hunt with the same book we used for the other one. I checked these out from our school library, and both schools I've had a class set of these. And it doesn't matter if they're current or not. And we'll just do a scavenger hunt just because my students love the place value scavenger hunt. But like I said, I did include lesson 12 and 14 as a workstation activity. Okay, so in science this week, my students are going to complete a biome poster. Now, this is going to lead into a carousel type activity. I love doing these. We will watch a few Study Jam videos on biomes and continue that. But what I will do is I'm going to assign my students into groups. We'll have a group for, let's see, 1, 2, 3, about 6 different biomes. And then when my students get their biome, they're going to spend time creating a poster. I would say at least 1 class lesson, and I'll have books checked out from the library, and my students will also have their Chromebooks. They're going to create posters, and I will hang the posters in the hallway. Then students will take the page that you can see with clipboards into the hallway, and they have to write down a certain number of facts about each biome using their classmates' posters. I think I will make my students have 3 facts about each. This isn't exactly in my personal science standards, but I really think this is a good extension. It's good research, it's good note-taking, and it doesn't hurt for students to go a little above the standards or my standards into the biomes. And then I saw this activity on Instagram, and I think it's Fancy Free and Fourth. She does an edible ecosystem with the chocolate pudding and the green sprinkles and the animal crackers and the gummy worms. So we'll do that this week too, because I'm sure my students will absolutely love it. Now you'll notice on my lesson plans, once again on Friday, rather than doing science, I am going to do give a summative math assessment on rounding. Now, where I teach, students are able to retest, so I did include multiple versions of the same assessment. So this week in reading, we're going to work on just a very basic reading comprehension strategy of making connections. This should not be something new to students, but I really like to start with digging deep into the comprehension strategies, so when we get into later units, the comprehension is just kind of built in, that general comprehension. So we start with just an overall of different types of connections. Now once again, I do have a printable, but as a whole, I will be making an anchor chart with my students, and we'll just be adding sticky notes to the anchor chart rather than printing this printable here, but it's perfectly, whichever if students have an interactive notebook, they can use that. This will be what my anchor chart looks like: text to self, text to text, and text to world. I love using Patricia Polotko for those types of connections. Then I also, though, I am careful to add some nonfiction into our mentor text because, like I've mentioned before, I don't want to omit informational text and nonfiction text. I want those woven into reading regularly because as I go through science, as my students are researching in science, we need to go ahead right now and start working on those nonfiction reading skills. I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to not wait. And we do talk about how we're going to read a fiction text differently than we're going to read a nonfiction text. That's just kind of built in to the lessons. Now this week I do want to do something special for the solar eclipse, so I'll add a little activity to my blog. I'm not quite sure what that will be yet. And then also, I think I'm going to separate my workstation into a completely separate video just because, well, with 10 stations, this would take a really long time, and I will be reusing these for multiple weeks, so it's not just these stations are for 1 week. So I may make an entirely new video for workstations. Thank you, and I hope you have a great week.